I'm kind of just telling you what my experience is, and if you want to come in and listen, that's cool. If you feel uncomfortable doing it, you know, maybe you should examine why that is.
I think the first time it was like brought to my attention was I had just moved from like my hometown to a new school, and hometown it was like a little bit more diverse. Newtown was pretty white, and I was new. I came in like halfway through the school year. Everybody knew each other and stuff. I think after a while I had like settled in and made friends and stuff, so I had like a group of girls that I hung out with. I was the only black girl. It was 3 other white girls.
Growing up in Texas in a majority white city, I never really paid much attention to it until I got to DC and being around other blacks. I realized that, oh, I am black, and that being a dark-skinned dude coming from Texas, you know, you never really paid attention to those things. So when I got to DC and realized I'm around other blacks is when I first had my epiphany that I'm black.
There's oftentimes when I go back to Los Angeles where I remember like, okay, I need to just go back to Atlanta, because there's this assumption if I walk into the store that I'm gonna steal something. I'm like, all right, y'all, I'm not gonna, whatever.
I had migrated from Jamaica here, and in Jamaica, everyone is black majority, and even those that aren't, you don't necessarily think they aren't. You just accept everyone as black, because it's really a black nation. And then I moved here, and second grade, and for the first time, I was made to feel different. I was made to feel as if I was just not accepted, and I couldn't understand what the issue was.
I was in kindergarten. We were doing a art project where the teacher had asked us all to draw a portrait of ourselves. And at the time, I was the only black girl in my class. And it was that way until like maybe 8th grade at that school. So she was saying, I need everyone in the classroom to pick up the apricot crayon, except for Michaela. You pick up the brown one. And it was kind of just like that moment where I was like, oh, I am different from like everyone else in this classroom.
I was 5 years old. I've always done well academically, so I was selected to be a part of this children's program, a local children's program. So when I arrived at the studio, and it was my time to prepare to go on set, I was denied, you know, going on set because I distinctly remember the adults, which were white, saying that I was too dark.
I'm from a town in Tennessee. Through the emphasis on education, that's what pushed me out of agriculture and into the arts. And I earned my way through college, earned my way through graduate school, went on to Ohio State, went on to study research at the University of Paris and New York University. And then before I had my first job, and when I went for my first job interview in New York City, I was excited, freshly minted degree, second master's degree, and was at a very prestigious firm on Madison Avenue. Sat down with a gentleman who looked at my resume, looked at me, looked at my resume, and left the interview. He comes back around 5 minutes later, and he says, I'm sorry, but we're not hiring any black people today.
I think the first time I realized I was black was when I moved to New England, I started going to a majority white parochial school, and having grown up in Haiti and everybody kind of looking like you or some version of you, and moving up north to somewhere that it was pretty, you know, it was pretty white.
We went to high school, it was still pretty white, and then a lot of the circles I was in, I was like the only black girl. And I think I never felt like no black person ever was like, oh, well, yeah. I think like it was like jokes. Like I know like my cousin was like, you talk a little white, but like other than that, like no one ever made me feel bad. I think it was an anxiety thing though, where it was like worried that am I not going to be black enough when I do get around black people, and then it's like when I'm with black people, like I know there's an obvious difference, but I think it was just like a personal anxiety for me where I was like, let's see if I fit in, and I always did. It was never a problem, but it was like in the back of my head kind of a worry.
To be honest, it was heartbreaking to go to a school where everyone made fun of you because of how you looked. And it was weird also because not only was I not accepted by the white people, some of the black people thought I wasn't black enough. And it was just really heartbreaking.
When we talk about colorism within the black community, what we were talking about is internalized oppression. As we internalize and hate ourselves, then we learn to discriminate against other people within our own community.
In that moment, I think I was more upset about not having the opportunity to be a part of the program and not really realizing that I was denied not because I wasn't smart enough or, I wasn't worthy of being there. It's because someone decided that I was not good enough because my skin was dark. It is something in society that is a reality, because again, it's a safe space, and they don't see unless you are coming through with a certain look, a certain job position, a certain credentials, they feel safe. But if you're just an average Joe walking into a store, walking anywhere, just anywhere in society, it's still seen as a threat, because I believe that people still go off the stereotypes of what they see in movies, TV, what the news reports. A lot of times you see that they're going to report on you see the darker skinned criminals, however you want to label them, versus now I know they are out there, but 9 times out of 10, I'll see someone that's my skin tone. When I first started doing this, they would tell me that they had enough of my look, which was a light-skinned black girl. And so I started off early 2000s. So 2002 was my first on-air job. And at the time, all the agents were like, no, they have enough. There's only one per station. And literally, I would get a job, and if there was another light-skinned black girl there, I almost knew either they were trying to replace her or she was leaving, or I was going to be her replacement. And then I would be the only one, and I almost had the responsibility of being the sounding board for the entire black community. I think it's important for us not to dismiss that our brothers and sisters that are light-skinned, they're having struggles because people discriminate against them. People that are very dark-skinned, folks discriminate against them. Now, the other conversation that we don't have is that people are in the middle, like myself. No one ever comments about my skin color, period, point blank. They don't say that I'm too light. They don't say that I'm too dark. It's not a conversation for them at all. And I think we tend to have conversations on the margin of this issue, and we don't look at it from a full perspective.
And I had even different discomfort when I moved down south and I spoke like a Valley girl, which is what I got a lot. So I felt very disconnected from what should have been my culture, because I was raised in such a different place. So when I came down south, I just didn't know what to do.
This is actually a really serious issue, because I noticed that we have this idea that what black sounds like. And so if you're from the Caribbean, or if you're from the African continent, or if you happen to be from the UK, then if you sound like someone that's from the UK, then there's this idea of you're sounding too white. And again, that's that internalized oppression, because it's an idea that we have to fit into one box as African Americans. And often that one box that we're expected to fit in is a box that is designed by racists to keep us in a racist stereotype.
As a child and growing up in an African household, you realize that you don't have the same privilege like your friends, like Pookie, Keisha, and them, right? Growing up as a first generation you hear all the bad names: African booty scratcher, black monkey, nappy-headed little girl. You hear all that, bald-headed little girl, all that. You know what I'm saying? And me being a darker-skinned girl, we could be here all day and talk about all the insults over here from adults and children.
The kids noticed that I had hair on my arms and legs, so they started to call me a wolf. But one little kid came and corrected them and said, "Oh no, she's too dark. She's a gorilla."
It's harder for someone like myself, who's first generation. Both my parents are from the motherland, grew up in the hood, and you have to kind of always have your armor up because you never know how people are going to take you because of how you dress, how you look, how you may talk, especially when you have to speak the English language 3 different ways.
When I see the struggles that, and not necessarily even struggles, more like obstacles that I've overcome to prove that I'm not that stereotypical person that you want. Now, if you want the code switch to get the hi, how are you? I'm great versus, hey, what's up? What's happening? You know, what's up, Joe? You know, then those are things for me that others may not see as an obstacle, because that is what I've had to do all my life up until I moved to DC.
It's never going to be a thing where someone's like, well, you passed the test and you're black enough now and now you can go. It's like, no matter what I do or how I talk or what I wear, or like what I like to watch or listen to, like, you're going to be black at the end of the day.
I would have to say that I first realized that I was black was back in the 1960s when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. I remember my teacher, I forget her last name, but she was a white teacher, blonde hair, blue eyes. She came in, she was crying, and she said, "Class, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has been assassinated." And then before you know it, she says, "Class, you're going to have to go home because there's rioting that's taking place." And I believe there was rioting that had just started in maybe Chicago, Detroit, didn't happen here in Atlanta. And they were concerned about it happening in Oakland. They wanted us to get home as quickly as possible. That's when I realized, you know, that, man, I'm an African American. I'm a young black kid.
Like the Rodney King situation, okay? When I watched 4 or 5 white cops brutally beat this man and get acquitted, okay? That showed me that we really was looked down upon in the society. I went through a period on Old National in College Park, right, where I was pulled over, right? I was pulled over. It was they pulled me over for not making a right-hand turn in a right turn only lane. So I never needed to use blinkers. But they used this to go through my whole car, and I ended up catching a charge. This was back in 2019. Fortunately, I was able to beat that charge. That charge impacted me to a point where I realized that my existence meant more than the chances that I was taking. For my daughter, my son was already of age. He had already had the best of me. But my daughter at that time needed me. And I couldn't see making decisions that was going to pull me away from my child and have her lacking something that's as important of my presence.
When we talk about incarceration, we need to take a look at that from a long-term perspective. When we look at the period of enslavement, what we know is that African people were not predominantly the ones that were incarcerated because our bodies were seen as a commodity. And so we weren't the ones that were in jail. After emancipation, then we see a shift that happens, and more people of African descent are being incarcerated. And one, because that's the only way that you can legally actually get free labor out of people, right? And it's one of the ways that I see is like a reinforcement of white supremacy, where there are all these little ways that we can find to criminalize black people.
As a black man in America, I think I'd have to go back just a little bit more. Just once again, my older brother, his name is Malcolm, he's still around. He's in his 70s. And I remember him telling me, and this is in the 60s and 70s, he used to say, "Ron, I wish I was white. It's like, dude, why? I wish I was white because there's more opportunities for white people than there are for black people.
Like I recall when I was talking to one of my friends, and a young white girl, I was about 5 or 6, and I told her I wished I was white. And it wasn't because of the color of my skin, but I just really wanted long flowy hair. And all the people around me who had long flowy hair were white. So I just wanted to be like them and just have my hair bouncing as I ran through the fields.
I work with social media, so a lot of the times you compare yourself even though you're not supposed to, but I know that my job would be a lot easier if I was the stereotypical American girl, which would be like blonde hair, blue eyes, white, and I'm aware that, you know, being in my position, being a plus size black woman, there's definitely a lot more obstacles in the way.
The first time I realized I was black, when I was 6 years old, I was not really happy because there was more white people. There was like this much white people, and then there was like this much black people celebrities, and I was kind of sad.
Why did it make you sad?
Because I don't see like black people like me that much. I have a little bit of questions for Black History Month. Yeah. Is there like a White History Month?
Yes, 11 months out the year.
Do you feel like there needs to be a White History Month?
Yeah, I mean.
Explain to me why you think there needs to be a White History Month.
Because like they don't really, well, from the celebrity thing, like that's kind, but for celebrating white people, there's not really like any celebration. There's only like a black people celebration. I mean, like these should celebrate white people too. I mean, like, yeah, just to be fair.
Okay. Do you think they have something to celebrate about?
No, I mean, from the looks of it, I don't know. No.
My hair was a constant problem. So if I had an afro out, I'd get sent to the principal's office. If I had braids, it'd be a distraction. So it kind of felt like no matter what I did, unless I had straight hair or what they would refer to as tameable hair, everything was a problem. So then I started kind of feeling different than everybody else because I'd get called out of class all the time for my hair.
Well, when it comes to black women and men and natural hair, this is a conversation that I'm going to admit that I try to be really careful about. So if you look at me in terms of my hair, I have naturally curly hair. And so one of the things that I don't think that we talk about enough is that some black people have privilege because their hair approximates European standards of beauty more than others. And so no one has ever said anything to me about my hair. If I wore my hair natural, no one is going to make a comment about that. However, my brothers and sisters that have more curly, tight curled hair that is beautiful, they would receive feedback about that. And we know that things are changing. We see lots of more people that have their natural hair, whether it be on commercials or whether, no matter what their profession is, that's great. But we know that there's still that kind of historic impact of if your hair does not approximate a European standard of beauty, that it's not okay. And those messages not only get translated into that your hair is not okay, but then that also means that you're not okay. And that has a psychological impact on adults and I think on children.
The margin of error was so much less for me than it was for other people. If I were to make a small mistake, it would be a mountain, versus if someone who would make an even bigger mistake of another race, no big deal, it would be looked over. So that's how it has manifested throughout my career. But again, it's just one of those things, you get to the place where it's like, I'm stronger, I can do this, I can figure it out, and you rise to the occasion eventually.
I have 3 degrees, but it still is a challenge for me, and I have to have a pep talk with myself before I step in any meeting, especially if it's mixed company. And because I'm always in the back of my mind, that little 5-year-old girl is saying, okay, do you belong here? And I have to reassure myself that you belong here just because of who you are, not because of your degrees, not because of your title or because of anything else. It's because you exist that you belong in this space.
I don't need the validation of everyone else around me to be who I am. And what I've learned is that as long as I keep being myself, the right people notice it, and you excel.
People never assume that I am a doctor, that I have a PhD, that I have 5 degrees.
I have a master's from Syracuse. I had to go get a meteorology degree from Mississippi State just so I can sit in a room and they say, I will hire you.
One of the things that makes me mad that Black people do in the community is when we start to believe other people's lies about who we are. My grandfather used to tell me all the time, don't believe what they tell you about who you are and what we have done. You know that that's a lie. So when we start to say that Black people don't read, or that all Black men are criminals, or that all Black men are cheaters, or that all Black women are loud, or that are mean, or that are emasculating men, those are lies. Those are racist stereotypes that are put upon our community. And when we start taking those things in and start acting in ways that reinforce those racist stereotypes, that is really problematic to me.
This perpetuation that we have to struggle in order to succeed. That we have to, if you're not truly Black, you're not truly Black if you haven't gone through something, if you haven't started from the bottom and rose up. That perpetuation really puts people in the mindset of that, oh, I'm struggling, that means I'm going somewhere. No, you don't have to struggle. You don't have to struggle. If you are struggling, okay, that's fine. But that doesn't define you. And too many Black people allow that to define them. And unfortunately, too many people get stuck there. And that to them, it's like, oh, I can't do any better. I can't be greater than this. So I'm going to continue to perpetuate this idea that I'm struggling. And because I'm struggling, you have to struggle too, or you have to see my struggle.
I really believe that a lot of people within the Black culture, that we're more of consumers than investors. We consume a lot of pop culture. We know all the latest bling that you gotta wear. We know what Beyonce, her latest record, or they don't call them records, but her latest song that's coming out. We know all that stuff about all the stars when it comes to pop culture. But I believe that we as Black people need to invest in ourselves with information, starting our own businesses, being entrepreneurs, going to workshops, seminars, looking at tutorials on YouTube, whatever's free out there, and invest in ourselves and not be so much consumers of pop culture and social media.
I feel like there are a lot of assumptions people make about Black people. But one of the things, if you study economics, economists assume that people operate in their best interest. And people will do what they know to do under the circumstances that they're in order to survive and thrive. And I feel like the more we have an opportunity to know better, the more we have an opportunity to do better. And the more we have an opportunity to make manifest the greatness that's within each and every one of us.
There's nothing in life too hard for any of us that we can't achieve. We're born to move mountains every day. And I will lead you with this. Be careful with what you allow to come out of your mouth. Okay? Because words move mountains. Okay, you want to know how the Egyptians built pyramids? They spoke it and worked on it.
What can Black people do to move forward? Stop thinking that it's our responsibility to move forward and to heal stuff. We did not create the system. We are not the ones that created the destruction. We are not the ones that came over here and stole indigenous people's lands. So we don't have nothing that we need to do to move forward. We just need to stay Black.
I categorize myself in multiple groups, if you would say, whatever. I'm born in America, but my family's Jamaican. So there's that heritage or lineage that you kind of want to promote, and but it being American, you want to learn more about where your parents come from to kind of keep those traditions alive. But when it's all said and done, I'm a Black man.
I didn't know who I was. I didn't really have the opportunity to explore my identity because I was surrounded by so many other people who were very strict in their identity. They were either Irish or German, and they very much stuck to that. I think the discomfort came from my experiences and microaggressions.
It was tough, because I'm talking about every day. Riding a bus, going to school, people calling you names, kids trying to pick fights with you. They don't understand why you look the way you look, why your mama talk different from the other folks. Because automatically they think that if you black with an accent, you from the islands. No, that's not how that works, people. Keisha, Bookie and them, whenever they get try to disrespect it, right, their mama and daddy say, nah, handle that, defend yourself, beat their butt. Whereas in an African household is, don't fight, tell the teacher, don't fight, walk away, don't fight because I don't need the cops coming to my house, let alone I don't need immigration coming here with the cops, taking me away from you and you in the system. So those are the struggles with the African Americans and then the Africans here in America.
To a certain degree, it makes me upset when African Americans kind of mimic the lingo or the flavor, I would say, of Jamaicans, because at the same time it's no different than a black person trying to speak Irish with I guess you couldn't say a black person's accent, whatever, but when you don't know about a culture and why words are translated the way it is or why slang is said the way it's said, it kind of comes as snobbish. It's basically cultural appropriation.
It brings a lot of confliction because for African people, it's all about doing it right. If you want to get into the culture, if you want to practice the culture, if you want to be into it, just do it right. When people name their kids after an African country and be like, oh, it's an African name. No, it's not. No African country was named by an African. They were all named by colonizers. And saying that is kind of like another way of making fun, especially when you go around an older African, you say that, they're going to be like, no, 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 no. It's cute, but no, 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 no. Don't say it's African, because the way how the African naming works is it depends on where you're from, the country, the town, the tribe, the day you was born, the week you was born, the time. It depends on all that. It's a ritual when it comes to our names. And as I tell people, if you want to name your child after an African country, you should find out what was the name of the country before its modern day name. Because at that point, when you say that to people, oh, her name is this, and they be like, oh, that's my country's original name. Oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Then it's like, okay, you're trying, you want to learn, versus you just doing too much.
Even naming children after African countries, those are political statements. And so we have to be able to understand that from time and context. So when people are doing that, African Americans are doing that, they're doing that as political statements. So to simply dismiss that is dismissing the political statement that's underlying the reason that they're doing it.
I think what makes me really proud to be Black is that Blackness comes in all different shapes and sizes and colors, and you can still relate to somebody who has a completely different experience from you, because at the end of the day, you have grown up in American society, and whether you face full-out racism or microaggressions, you have felt different in white spaces. And visually, sometimes that means walking into a room, realizing there's only 2 other Black people there, and y'all having a nod, because you know that you are relating to being the other in a space, and you kind of feel safe within that.
So what makes me proud to be Black is the one thing I feel all Black folks share in common is confidence.
This is what I love about being Black. Number one, I don't see myself as an underdog, but I see it as an advantage, because it helps me to understand that regardless of what somebody may put me in a box and tell me what my limitations are, I can show them, other young Black men, other young Black women, that you can make it, that this is not a barrier, this is not an obstacle. Your skin pigmentation is not at all. It's all about perception. It's all about how you view yourself, and that's going to determine where you're going to be out there with the, quote, majority or anyone else out there. So that's what I love love about being African American, because the odds are allegedly against us, statistics are against us, but we can still thrive and be successful, and that's what I love about being black.
What makes me proud to be black is just, black is beautiful, and it's not just, you know, aesthetically. What it means strength, it means dignity, it means honor, it means perseverance. Black is so many different things, it's so layered, and I would not trade the skin I'm in for anything. Like, I am so excited to be black and to be a woman.
I think everything, just my hair, my skin color, my origins, the way that our people feel connection to the ancestors, the way that we cook.
Well, I'm proud and happy to be black, because I know that regardless of all the obstacles I have gone through, I would not have been able to survive it if I was black. I don't believe that some of the things that I've dealt with, other people could have if they weren't of our race. I feel like we're built better. We're made to persevere.
I can't see myself being nothing else at all, because we as a people, we have such a beautiful story, despite the trauma, but it's how we manage to come on the other side, manifesting with our head up high and taking our pain and make it into glory.
What I want black people to do is believe in themselves. I want them to know that we are amazing, that we are loved, that we are creative, that we are powerful. And it doesn't matter that we live in this society right now where there is all this negativity that comes towards us. We have survived, our ancestors have survived, and we are going to make it. We will win.